One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Krystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, Profit Podcast listeners, I'm so excited about today's guest because we are going to get so nerdy on all things podcasting, and I'm just so excited for it. So thank you for coming on the show today, Jordan.
Thank you so much for having me, Krystal. Finally.
I know, this is so fun. So it was just a few weeks ago that Jordan and I, it was so nice. She invited me to speak on this panel for the San Mateo Libraries in California. And we had so much fun geeking out over podcasting. And this is actually where I feel like we kind of got to know each other a little bit better and just how nerdy we are about podcasting. And I feel like we're bonded for life now, like the podcast sisters. I don't know. Is that a thing?
I agree. We were vibing pretty tough in that workshop. And I think it went overtime about a solid hour. So
yeah, it was so, and I felt like we could have just kept going. And it was funny because it was so late for me because we were on Pacific time and I'm Central, and I was just like, okay, it's past my bedtime, y'all. Like I gotta go, but I want to sit. Like y'all are my people. I want to sit here and stay.
Yeah, I think I went to bed at like midnight that night because I was just pumped after that.
Oh, it was so fun. So fun. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited because Jordan and I, we've actually been going back and forth. So I want to start with how we first got introduced. So Jordan and I are both Buzzsprout creators, and this is basically we have the in with all the Buzzsprout peeps, and we get to try some of the new features and beta test some things. But I want to know, how did you actually get into podcasting, and what does that journey look like for you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I was just a huge fan of podcasts and I kind of turned my kids onto podcasting and they wanted to listen to podcasts like storytime podcasts for bedtime. And a lot of the kids' podcasts are very just bright and cheerful, or they're like 7 minutes long if they're really good and relaxing. And my kids don't go to bed that fast. So I kind of did the whole, I'll just do it myself. How hard can it be kind of story. And I learned how hard it actually is. But I wound up just making the bedtime story podcast that I could not find. And it went really well. I think it was something that was needed. So just kind of stumbled onto that. But yeah, I did a lot of research. I think I just binge listened to Buzzcast and Podcasters Roundtable, and obviously like the Buzzsprout YouTube and the blog, and just I mean consumed everything I could for about 2 or 3 months before I even started. And the only reason I started was because my husband was tired of me researching and he went and bought me all the equipment and said, "There, now you have no excuse." And so I I was forced into it and I'm glad he did that because I probably
And
would have dragged my feet.
oh my gosh, and here you are. So when
Mhm.
did you officially launch your podcast?
It was like August of 2019 was when I officially
Okay.
launched. Yeah.
Okay. So I know our listeners, like, we're going to get into some super nerdy things in a second. And like Jordan and I, like, there's spreadsheets, y'all. We have charts. We have all kinds of things to nerd out on podcasting. But I know that there are people listening right now that have not started and they are in that phase right now where they're just like,
Mhm.
I've done all the research. I know how everything works theoretically, but maybe they just need that extra little loving push. What's something that you would say to them?
Hmm. I would say to just record. Just do it. Just record your trailer or your first podcast. I'm not saying just hit publish. I'm saying just record it and then go through the editing process. And I think you'll be really surprised at how proud you are of what you've done. And I think that alone will make you want to hit that publish button. Just
Yeah, that's
sitting down and recording. It's really nerve-wracking the first time you do it. We talked about this before. You get this like pit in your stomach and you're like nervous and sweaty even though like there's literally nobody around. But just do it and then kind of go back and you'll be like, "You know what? This isn't so bad."
I love that you share that about the pit in your stomach because I think that everyone feels that, but they think that they're alone. They think that, oh,
Mhm.
other people that have been doing this, I bet they never felt this way, and I love that we talk about it's kind of like the thing that's like the dirty little secret that no one
Oh,
wants to say. Oh, I hate the sound of my voice, or I hate, that I'm high pitch, or I'm low pitch, or I'm this, or I have an accent, or this and that. And I'm like,
yeah. Mhm.
y'all, if I can do this, you could do this too. I promise.
It's so true, and it's just it's this funny thing. I mean, it's so true that you are your worst critic. I mean, and yeah, if you just kind of let those doubts sink in a little too deep, it's fine to have some doubts because I kind of feel like that's what keeps you like gives you an edge. If you don't feel like you're perfect, that's what makes you work even harder to make it great. But I think that if you let it sink in a little too deep, if you let those roots grow a little too deep, then you're not gonna move forward. So it's
Yeah.
it's good to keep that in check, but also be, saying like, okay, where can I improve? Or this is probably good enough, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Mhm.
love that we have the perspective where we interact with podcasters all the time. And I think that this is something we see all the time. And I just love how everybody can have their own perspective and different way that they like your show is totally different than my show. And it's
Yeah.
totally different than, the next 10 shows that we could open our phones and look at on there. So I just love everything's so diverse. And this is
Mhm.
the perfect segue into everything is changing. Oh my gosh. So, as of, Jordan and I were recording this, there are so many changes happening right now in real time with Apple and Spotify and just like all the big players right now. So Jordan came prepared and she has so many awesome things to share. So first and foremost, I just want to get your initial reaction to Apple's announcement that they made recently. And what was the first thing that went through your head? Is this going to affect you? Does it not really affect you?
I have to be honest, being a bedtime story podcast, when I heard that they were doing a paywall sort of thing, my first reaction was, oh no, there's going to be these chirpy hosts or just dynamic ads inserted willy-nilly, and my listeners are going to hate it and they're not going to listen to sleep podcasts anymore. That was my initial reaction. And then I kind of got some more information, and I'm still not entirely certain about what that's going to be like. I don't know if you got any information on that, but so that was my first instinct was, oh no, there's going to be these wonky ads willy-nilly everywhere, and I was so scared about that.
So tell everybody real fast, because we didn't really explain it super well. What exactly is the bedtime stories? Like, so just tell a little bit about like what a typical episode looks like for you.
Yeah, so for me, I just have like my intro, which is like housekeeping, sponsors, Patreon, thank yous. And then I go into like this ambient music, and then I tell a story with that ambient music. And then at the end of the story, the music plays for like another 10 or 15 minutes, just in case they're not quite asleep yet. So that's kind
Okay.
of the way that my podcast is so much different from the other bedtime story podcasts.
Yeah, I love, I wanted to make sure we really hit on that, because when we talk about dynamic ad insertion and like putting stuff at the beginning or the end, like, I mean, I equate what your podcast is, because I do meditations and stuff. And
Mm.
so I imagine if you're sitting there listening to a meditation, all of a sudden it's like, and try out Geico and see what their next thing is. I'd be like, what in the world is going on?
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
I am married to pre-rolls in my intro. That is it. I
Ah,
can't do post rolls, I can't do mid rolls. I am married to them, and I got to stick with that. And so
yeah.
yeah, I get a little nervous about, the platforms inserting their own stuff.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
I know. It scares me a little bit too, because so you kind of alluded to, did I get any, answers to questions? So because we're kind of in cahoots with Buzzsprout and we talk to them a lot, I know that there was a call that they had to talk to Apple and kind of, figure out more of what's actually going on and clarify some of the things that we as an industry have gotten from Apple that maybe were either misinterpreted by us, or we misunderstood it, or we just downright don't understand. And one of the things that I still have a question on is the ads, because I mean, we look at YouTube, right? And I know I have a channel that is monetized, and so it, like, there's ads in there, but I'm paid for them. But I know my mom, she has a YouTube channel as well. She hasn't hit that threshold of subscribers, but she told me the other day, she's like, I'm starting to see ads on my stuff too. So even though I'm not getting paid for them, they're starting to put ads on every single video that's out there. So I think that it should all make us a little nervous to see what's going to happen.
And it's a lot of
So
ads. Plus,
yeah.
let's say that, the listener isn't paying subscriber to the podcast platform. And so they get these ads, throughout the podcast or something. just like a YouTube video. And then on top of that, there's ad breaks for the host read ads. I mean, that would kill
Yeah.
podcasting. People would be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm getting ads from like both sides, and that doesn't work for me. And
Yeah.
you couldn't blame them. I mean, oh.
I know that's the part that makes me very nervous. And it's not just someone putting up a Geico ad or something like that. But I think it's also my mom and we were having this conversation, and I keep bringing her up simply because she has a garden podcast, and she's very adamant on how she does her stuff. Like, she doesn't use any chemicals in her garden. And she's like, what if one day somebody puts a Roundup ad in front of my podcast? Like, principally, it is so far removed from what her message stands for. I mean, that's the part that makes me nervous, and that I'm just like, I don't want to give up any kind of creative control over that. And, Jordan and I talking about this today, like, this is all us sharing our fears. And like, these are the things we talk about behind the scenes. So we don't know that it's going that way, but there's also no reason to believe that it couldn't be that way in the future.
Yeah. Even if it's just, 2 years from now. I mean, that's exactly what happened with YouTube. It's just ads upon ads upon ads. And honestly, I don't touch it anymore because it drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to, your initial reaction to Apple. So you were hoping that, it wasn't going to be, a whole bunch of ads. What about like the newest features with channels and paid subscriptions and subscribe versus follow? Like, what were some of your initial thoughts on those?
Subscribe versus follow. I mean, that just makes sense linguistically to me. It's just whatever. It is what it is. So that's fine. And people are kind of concerned about, like, oh, well, in the past I said to subscribe, not follow. And yeah, whatever. Like, people will know what you mean. It doesn't matter. So that's not really a huge deal. I haven't seen the new user interface for the Apple Podcast app. But apparently it's more clean, maybe more sexy. And I kind of feel like that's them trying to keep up with the other podcast apps that are, so cool and stuff. And so I feel like Apple's trying to stay there, especially since they started like slipping in the ranks a little bit. And so they're kind of like throwing in new things. I know that they added that Smart Play button. Is that what it was called, right?
Yeah, I think so. And that's one of those things that I heard it in passing. I heard them talking about it in Buzzcast, but I haven't seen a lot of articles or anything on it. So it still feels like a mystery to me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was like a little passive. I think that would actually be good. There's some podcasts that I subscribe to where their seasons are actually topics. And so Apple like organizes by the seasons, and so there's certain ones where they will post a new episode and I cannot for the life of me find it because it's not in like this year season. It's based on the topic, and I have to like figure out what topic they're talking about. So I think that's really smart. Sure, whatever. And yeah.
What do you think about
kind
channels?
Channels. I mean, I don't think it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
I really don't. I just don't think that there's a huge demand for that. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like the nice way to say, like, we can get all those podcasts separate. Why would we pay for like the whole shebang? Right. I guess maybe if you were like a diehard Luminary fan, then yeah, you would pay for the channel. I personally wouldn't. I think it's really good for like networks. But yeah, I don't know. It's probably just really good for like networks and, people with more than 3 podcasts. But other than that, I don't really have a huge opinion, probably because it doesn't affect me too much.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
So this is one of the things that I brought up to Travis. So Travis Albritton, he's the head of content and Buzzsprout, and he had asked like, hey, do y'all have any questions before we have this conversation with Apple? And one of the things that I posed to him was with channels, I get it as far as discoverability. Like for me, I have 2 separate podcasts. So if it was called the Krystal Profit Channel, which sounds so narcissistic. I mean, I guess I have the Profit Podcast, so I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe that's a topic for a therapy one day. But like the Krystal Profit Podcast channel, and then I could put both of my shows there, because there's a lot of people that say, oh, I didn't know you had a daily podcast. So I do see that discoverability by host would be a lot easier, because then people wouldn't have to know the exact name of your podcast. They could just know, oh, I know this person hosts a few. I'm thinking of like Gary Vaynerchuk, he has several different types of podcasts that he does. So maybe he could lump all of them there. But one of the distinctions that was made clear to me that I misunderstood from the beginning was you can't have free content and paid content under that channel umbrella. It has to be one or the other. So as soon as you decide like, oh, I want this one bonus piece of content to be put behind a paywall, well, then that makes everything related to that channel behind a paywall as well. And I was like, I don't like that. That sounds complicated and messy.
Well, also word on the street is that the free channels aren't actually free. The channels themselves are behind a paywall. So you have to pay to subscribe to the channel, but all the content within that channel might be free.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Again, all the questions and so many different. So I'm going to ask you some personal questions, Jordan.
Okay.
I want to know your behind the scenes. So tell me, what podcast player do you use on a personal basis?
I started out on Apple and it has all my download history and stuff. So I've been on it a lot. However, in the past few months, it's been glitchy where I just get the loading ring of death and it won't play the podcast and it says episodes unavailable. And it's been doing that for months. And so I've actually been moving over to Spotify because, because I mean, my whole family, we have the Spotify family plan because we just don't like ads and we choose to pay for that. So I've been on Spotify a lot, and honestly, they've made some updates just in the last year or so where I feel like their podcasts are a lot more user friendly. And yeah, I like the discoverability for Spotify too, a lot better.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'll air out my top secret listening behavior. Yeah, I listened on Apple Podcasts forever. I mostly listen on Good Pods now. I really like how you can interact and you can talk to people and do things. And I know that they are in constant development of their app, because I've had people say, well, sometimes it's glitchy and sometimes it does this and does that. And I feel like all the apps have a little bit of that because they're constantly trying to keep up with the other ones. So they're like, oh, we added this feature and we did this. So I think that across the board, I know there's other ones that are out there that people have told me about that I've never even heard of. And I'm like, I teach this, this is what I do, but there's new ones popping up all the time. But I wanted to ask, go ahead.
I tried Good Pods. I love Good Pods. I love the premise of Good Pods. I signed on as Dreamful just to maybe network a little bit, because that's kind of what it seemed like it was for. And I love the actual podcast listening capacity of that platform. I think it's great. I think it's user friendly. I think it's fun and nice to look at. But I listen to a lot of very brutal podcasts. And so the one thing that I don't like about Good Pods is it shows everything that, Dreamful has listened to. And so I have to be choosy about what I listen to on that. So it's education podcasts and relaxation podcasts because I don't want people knowing that there's this dark, scary side to me on the other side.
This is so funny. This is so funny because I actually I JJ, she's one of the co-founders of Good Pods, and she always tells me, she's like, well, when you tell people about Good Pods, make sure you tell them they can hide whatever they don't want on their feed. And so I don't know, there's a button that you can uncheck to make it private. So I'll show you how to do that on another
Please
time. But
do, because I love their platform so much, but I just don't want people to know how scary I am.
it's so funny. It's so funny. And I will just be totally transparent. I love Armchair Expert by Dax Shepard. I love it so much, but every once in a while they'll have these really crazy ones. And I listened to one about cannibalism. I'm totally putting myself right now on blast. And it was like super dark and like a little creepy, but y'all, I love Silence of the Lambs. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And so I'm just like, I just got to hear what this was about. And so it was so crazy. But yeah, I had that feeling. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't tell people that I'm listening to this. But here, I just added myself. So yeah, it's fine. But yes, you can make things private that you don't want to share on there.
I love that because I think it's such a genius platform. But yeah, I'm too scared.
Well, my next question was going to be, where is the majority of your listener base? Mine is actually, so I'll go first on this one. Mine is on both podcasts. It ranges between about 70 and 75% on Apple. So that's why I've really been paying attention. But is that the same for your show?
Absolutely not. I am on the complete different side of the spectrum. I am, I think my Apple podcast downloads have dropped to the 6% rate, and Spotify is like anywhere between 75 and 78% of my downloads.
It's so interesting.
And
go ahead.
I think it's possibly because of who's listening. I get a lot of I have a lot of like female listenership and kids, or people have like the kids profiles on Spotify. So I think it has to do a lot with your audience and what companies are drawing those types of people in. That's what I think.
I absolutely agree. And the reason why I wanted to ask you these questions is because, again, I wanted to show that, I teach podcasting a certain way on this show, and I share all of my examples, and I can only give everyone that's listening like my experiences, which is why I love having other podcasters on the show to share that it's not all cut and dry, black and white. This is the only way to do it. Like, we all are so, so different. And I think that, with Spotify, like in our house, we used to listen, like we subscribed to Amazon Music for a long time. Like that was the thing. And then my husband was like, maybe we should try out Apple Music. And I was like, okay. So we tried out Apple Music. And then we have, an Alexa in our house. I'm like, wait, hang on. No, there's not one in this room. I'm like, if I start saying their names, they're going to come alive and start talking to all of us, which is so crazy. But, it's like, I think it just depends on what the consumers' habits are and if they're willing to change those or not. Because I know when there were some podcasts that were going to be exclusive to Spotify, for example, I love Brene Brown. And when she announced that she was going to have it, I was like, I guess I'm just going to miss out on those, because there wasn't anything that was really tempting me to go over there other than that one podcast. So do you think that the same thing will happen? Like, let's come full circle with Apple. If they start releasing exclusive content there, do you think it's going to bring some of that market share back from Spotify to Apple?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, I kind of feel like Spotify's marketing department is out of this world. Like, they know what they're doing. They know how to bring people in. They know how to get them excited about podcasts. They're just killing it with podcasts. And I feel like Apple is not quite as passionate about that. Like, as a company, they're not pushing podcasts. They're not excited about it. They're not getting other people as excited about it. They're just like, oh yeah, we have podcasts. Like, we've been here the whole time. Like, we have, I don't know. And so I think that possibly they might get more people over, but they would have to get some really spectacular Apple specific shows, like something really spectacular, because Spotify is getting people that like I didn't even know they could get for podcasting. And it's crazy. I mean, they're making deals with like everybody. And yeah, I mean, Apple could do it. Apple's huge, but I just I don't, unless they make some really, really drastic changes with their podcasting platform, I don't see them really reeling back a whole lot more people.
I think it's going to be interesting. And that was actually one of the questions that I was going to ask you later, but it just feels right now. And that's like, what do you think podcasting is going to look like in 6 months to 12 months from now? Like, can you, honestly, I can't even imagine, because there's so much change. I feel like everything just like got dropped on us and they're like, hope you figure it out, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's a wild time to be a podcaster right now. I mean, it feels like you're a guinea pig on steroids. They are just, everyone's trying. I mean, Facebook dropped podcasting today.
Yeah.
Today. And there's just, I mean, everything's just getting blown up just like in the last 2 weeks. And with so many changes, I just can't even wrap my mind around what it's going to look like in 6 months, because I mean, just look at what's happened just in 2021.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only April, and there's just been so many changes, so many huge advances, so many podcasters coming into the space. And honestly, I'm kind of the opinion that, you know, more the merrier with podcasting, because the more people that get in on it, the more people that are in on it, and the more
Right.
listeners there are, and the more people discovering it, and the more the word's getting out. And, you know, I feel that way with like the celebrities too, making all these podcasts. So I think that it's starting to really boom. And I'm a little nervous about the growth rate of it. Honestly, I'm a little apprehensive. I mean, it's exciting. And it's exciting that podcasters are getting so much attention right now and so much money invested into them. And that's wonderful. But yeah, I'm really interested to see where where this goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You know, I started in 2018, you started in 2019, but here we are, it's 2021 and we're still veterans. Like, it's like, y'all are the veterans. Like, people are looking at us and I'm like, do you know that there's been people that have been doing this for decades? Like,
I'm still a toddler,
doing it.
Yeah.
I know, right? Like, I mean, and I feel like, you know, I've gone off the deep end and I'm like, you know, constantly devouring stuff. And that's where like we're totally about to get into the nerdy stuff and all the incredible information that Jordan has brought for us today. But I think it's just so fascinating to me to sit back and watch what's happening in real time and see every like I feel like the spotlight is just on podcasting right now. And I just cannot wait to see what happens.
It's a hot spotlight.
It's red hot.
We're sweating.
Yes, we are sweating for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, Jordan, tell us a little bit about, so it's funny because I asked Jordan, I was like, can I share this with our audience? Like, you know, because we were totally geeking out about spreadsheets before we hit record. And she was saying, I love doing them, but we're going to share this with you. But can you tell us a little bit about the premium podcast subscriptions and which ones you think our listeners should explore, what they need to know? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so I did some pretty decent homework on all these subscription platforms. I chose like the top 6 that seem to be the most interesting or the most popular ones, and kind of just went through. So I guess I'll just start at the top, the one that we've been talking about, Apple. So Apple launched the premium subscriptions, and I don't know, Krystal, you've gone into this on your podcast already.
Yeah, we talked about, we did a recent episode that was talking about high level, what a podcaster can kind of expect if they opt into the creator program. They're going to have a yearly fee. They're going to have a 30% off the top that's going to Apple for the first year? Is that what it is? Is it 12 months from when you start and then it'll drops down to like 15% or something?
Well, that's the member that joins, that subscribes.
Okay.
So your member has to be there for a year and then it drops to 15. It's weird, but
gotcha.
Yeah, so I did a calculation of these. So, just saying that, let's say that you have 4 people subscribe to your podcast and they each pay $5. So that's $20 a month, right? I just figured that would be nice to have like this blanket amount to really compare these. So we'll start with Apple. So Apple is $19.99 a year for you to be part of the creator program. And they also, like you said, charge the 30% transaction fees. So that means that your monthly payout for Apple would be $12.33 if you were to divide up the $19. Otherwise, you'd be like, I don't know, $7 in the hole, something like that.
Yeah.
So the pros with Apple is that they have the in-app purchasing. So, people can scroll in the app and just click buy, which, I mean, that's a proven marketing technique to have those bonus episodes hanging right in front of people's faces and they go, "Oh, I really want to, I'll just pay like the $5 for this month." That's a proven technique. It works with like games and all this stuff. They have the option for premium or freemium. They do monthly and annual billing options, and they host through Apple Connect the private RSS feed for you. The cons with this is basically pretty much just for Anchor podcasts. So podcasts hosted on Anchor do not technically have ownership of their podcast on Apple Connect. And according to Anchor's help page, what you can do if you want to take part in this is you need to contact Apple to transfer ownership from Anchor to your own Apple Connect account. So that's a little bit of work. I think it's a little bit tedious, but if Anchor people want to do that, then they can. So yeah, Apple, $12.33 would be the payout for the month. Spotify, they only charge 25 cents per transaction for their fees. And their platform fees are free up until 2023. So as of 2023, it's going to be 5%. So just for the sake of argument, we're including the 5% in this calculation. So for the $20 that you make after the transaction fees, the platform fees, you'll make $18 in that month, which is pretty substantial compared to Apple's $12. So the pros for Spotify, I mean, no platform fees until 2023. The cons for Spotify is that your private RSS can only be hosted on Anchor. They are only doing this through Anchor. So you have to get an Anchor account or, and put your private RSS feed on there. The purchases also are not in-app on Spotify. So if people are on Spotify and they want to buy these things, it redirects them to the Anchor page and they have to buy from there. So I think it's a little clumsy. And they only have 3 monthly pricing options, which is $2.99, $4.99, or $7.99. So you can't have premium content where you charge like $10 or $15 if that's usually what you do. You're married to these 3 options. I'd also heard, I wasn't quite able to substantiate this, but I had also heard that the listener must be subscribed to Spotify Premium as well. I wasn't able to.
So they would have to have an account. Like, how does Spotify do their, is it just free or paid, or do they have tiered accounts as well for members?
I mean, I think it's kind of tiered. Like we have like the family plan that's like freaking expensive one where you can have a bunch of people. They have one where you can just be like the premium where you just don't have ads. And then they also have the free where it does include ads.
Okay.
So yeah, I had heard that. I wasn't able to find that anywhere though. So I don't know if that's quite true, but that would be a real pain in the butt if your listeners had to have the Spotify premium account and then pay for your premium podcast on top of that. It's weird. So yeah. And then the next one I have is Patreon. And Patreon does the Stripe where it's like, per transaction they charge the 2.9% plus 30 cents. And then they also have a platform fee on the Patreon Lite, which Patreon Lite, that lets you have a private RSS feed hosted on it. It lets you like post photos and updates and have like community conversations, and you can post videos on there for your users, polls, things like that.
And you've been a Patreon user for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I have been. So Patreon, after the 5% and the transaction fees, they will be $17.22 out of your 20. Not too shabby. So the pros with Patreon is that they have monthly and they now have annual billing. And annual billing is awesome. I'm not sure what exactly makes you qualify for annual billing. It takes a little while, but that gives you the option to give people a discount, which is great. They have content flexibility, and like I said, you can do like posts and pictures and all that stuff. And they also host your RSS feed on the site. The only cons I could really think of for Patreon is that if you have non-US patrons, they charge an additional 1% for the transaction fee, which isn't like too big.
So I have a question about Patreon because I've actually, I haven't used them I've only like talked about them in theory, really. I've never used them as a host or as a listener. I'm not subscribed to Patreon accounts that way, but so it says that they'll host a private RSS. So would that mean that if I were subscribed to your, Patreon membership, would I just open up a Patreon app and that's where I would get my bonus content is within their app? How does that work?
You can do that. And you can also copy your own. They have like an RSS link and it's your personal RSS link. And you can slap that into Overcast or Apple Podcasts app or, a podcatcher app that lets you import RSS. And then those episodes just automatically populate. And when you unsubscribe from that Patreon, they disable that RSS. Super cool. Yeah, super cool. So my next one that I looked into was Glow, and I've heard so many people really push Glow. So I was really interested to look into this. So they also do the Stripe thing of 2.9% 30 cents. And I had to dig so hard to find out what their platform fees were. Because the only thing they said were like, no fees if you just do listener support, or their website would send you like in circles, or if I Googled like Glow FM podcast fee or like platform fees, I could not find it to save my life. And if you look at like their different like levels, it doesn't really explain it. You have to like email them. So I emailed them. Like I put in a query and like emailed them to find out the pricing, because that's what you have to do to find out the pricing. And I didn't hear back. And so I had to go to Reddit and I finally found on Reddit that they do, if you do the bonus content and not just the listener stuff, then it's 55 cents a member, which really isn't that bad. I don't know why they hide that so much. It's really just not that bad. And it's just really not that much. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the others, honestly, but I don't know. I don't think it's too shabby. So the pros for Glow is that they have no platform fee if it's listener support only, which is, donations. Like if you're just accepting donations, they won't charge you that. It'll just be the Stripe fee. My cons with them is that they're not very transparent about what the fees are. It's really hard to get any help with that. Signing up to use Glow is really difficult. You also have to request someone to email you to get like signed up and stuff. And it seems like there's just a lot of steps to get rolling with them. And I don't quite understand that. I'm sure that there's a reasoning for it. I'm sure that they think it's like really good customer service or something and, getting to talk with the person, but I just kind of want to like plug in and go.
So the
And
process is a little bit clunkier than like what we were talking about, like the Apple, like it's like, oh, I'm already here. Let me just press a button and I'm signed up and we're good to go. But that one's a little bit clunkier.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't just like, click sign up and like create your account. It's a lot harder than that. And then they also aren't super clear about what features are offered to podcasters based on like what kind of account you have with them. So yeah, it's really hard. I feel like there's going to be a lot of hidden fees or maybe like third party fees for the content you're creating. And yeah, them not hosting the private RSS feed on their site is another thing. So you have to have an account with like Transistor or some other things in order to have that RSS feed on their website instead of them just hosting it for you, which seems really weird to me if you have to host it somewhere, but they're charging you platform fees to like then distribute it and take the payments. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. But yeah, so Glow, that would be like a payout of $16.02 at the end of the month if you got $20. So still not as bad as Apple, but it's not as good as Spotify and Patreon. This one, I actually hadn't heard of it.
I haven't either. I'm curious to see where you learned about this. I saw that one or Supercast. I've heard of, so we're going to talk about PodFan first, but yeah, these last two, I was like, those are not on my radar. So how did you find them?
I mean, I'd heard of Supercast from someone, and then PodFan kind of popped up, and I just kind of like looked at them, and I was like, you know what? This isn't too bad.
Go down this rabbit hole.
This isn't too shabby. Yeah. So PodFan, they also do the Stripe fee, just like everyone else, the 2.9 and 30 cents per transaction. And they only charge 30 cents per member, which is a lot better. So your take home would be $17.02. The pros with PodFan, there's no platform fee for donations in the landing page. And they have like a really crisp interface, similar to like what Buzzsprout has, where it's just clean, nice to look at. So they don't charge you for having a page on their site where you can have info about your show and accept donations. They don't charge you for that. And it looks really nice. I'm pretty impressed with that. They also offer monthly and annual billing, which is great. And they also host the private RSS for you. So you just upload the episodes and then they make the RSS feed. And with PodFan, you can offer a 7-day free trial to listeners, which is super cool. That's pretty neat. I mean, that's not bad for 30 cents a member a month.
And that's the only one that you've seen, you've come across, right? Where you can actually test it out and try it, like do a 7-day trial before you actually subscribe to it.
You can with Supercast too, but yeah, this was the first one that I was like, oh, wait a second, that's really cool. My only con with PodFan is that there's no option for offering additional content as of now. I kind of feel like as they gain popularity, which I'm sure they will give you the ability to like have videos on there and posts and stuff to your fans. But right now it's just a really nice landing page for taking donations and also having a private RSS feed with bonus episodes, which is great. I mean, really, that's pretty much all a podcaster needs.
Right.
So I was really surprised. I was pleasantly surprised with PodFan, and I'm shocked I didn't hear about it before. Yeah. And then Supercast, this is the second most expensive one next to Apple. So it's they charge the 2.9% and 30 cents for the transaction fee, and then 59 cents per member. So your take home would be $15.86 with Supercast. However, I don't really have any cons with Supercast. I couldn't find anything really wrong with it. They host your private RSS feed. They do trials. They do one-time billing, monthly and annual billing. So that's a lot of options right there. They do content flexibility through Zapier and Ask Me Anything feature. Um, it doesn't look like I couldn't really find if you can post like videos on there or anything like that, but I think it's kind of cool that you can have like an Ask Me Anything on the site for the people subscribe to you. That was pretty cool. And then they also do a custom plan for networks and multiple show bundles. So that's pretty neat. I didn't see that on any of the other ones. Just taking in all of that, if you're only going to get 4 people to your podcast, if you get 4 people a month that donate $5, that subscribe for $5, in my opinion, the highest value is going to be Patreon because it's such a robust platform. And it's pretty impressive that even though it wasn't created for podcasters, they do have that private RSS hosting capability. So they put a lot of thought into it for podcasters. And I've had a lot of luck with it. And I think it's a really, really great platform. But close second, if all you're doing is putting up bonus episodes, Podfan all the way. I would totally go Podfan. It's a great site.
It's so interesting because I've never heard of them, and now I'm definitely going to go check them out. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, oh, okay, I definitely, and we're going to have links to all of these so you can go check them out and look at them. And we're going to have a link to Jordan's chart here, which is just, I love this so much. Like spreadsheets are your love language, and it's so pretty and it's so easy to understand. I love the pros and the cons. This is how I make decisions in my life. I think about something and I'm like, what's the pro? What's the con? So we're totally on board with this. But I am just wondering, what is everything going to look like in the future? And I'm so excited that there are this many companies to choose from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not just, you have to just go Apple, you have to just go Spotify. Like there are so many, and we've talked about this many times already, diverse podcasts, ones that are weekly, ones that come out every single day, ones that want to charge a lot of money, ones that want to be free. Like there is room for everybody. And I love that there are so many people that are trying to just bring up podcasting. That's what I really feel like. I feel like everyone is just like, let's all, like you said, put the spotlight on podcasting. Even though we're sweating, we're trying to figure things out. We're scrambling at times to know what's best. But I think at the end of the day, like podcasters are really different than, let's say, a YouTube star.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really hear that much about a podcast star because they have a different connection with their audience. And that's what I want to talk about real fast is if someone's listening and they're like, okay, Jordan, Krystal, y'all put a lot of information. My head is exploding. I don't even know what to think, but I want to do what's best for me and my listeners. And someone's just getting started. What would you recommend for them? Do you recommend that someone try out one of these paid options from the beginning? Or would you recommend someone kind of figure out podcasting for a little bit and then jump into it? Like, what is your gut reaction?
So I'm going to have to pull from my personal experience really, because it's what worked for me is that I set up a Patreon before I even announced to anybody that I was thinking about doing a podcast. And I set up a Patreon. I did a coming soon thing and just had it ready. And so then when I announced it prior to launch, I had I don't know, $30 in Patreon members just before I even launched the podcast. I hadn't even put the trailer out yet. And it was just like there. And, it's like, it's friends and like my mom, but still it covers like hosting fees. I had like my equipment paid off in like a couple months. It's not like a big deal, but I just had it there prior to launch. And then when my first episode came out, I just started out announcing the Patreon and what kind of things I offer and how much it is. And like, for $1 a month, you can get all these bonus episodes. And that really just kind of like got it started. And I have to be honest, the more I've been doing it, the more Patreon members I get, because what's happening is the word's getting out to more and more people. And in the meantime, I've been building up this back library of all this bonus content. So right now, my Patreon says, hey, become a member and get 85 exclusive posts, because I've been working on it since I launched the podcast. And so that's the other thing, is like, the more bonus episodes and stuff you put in, like, yeah, you might not get someone for like the first like year even, but as you go and you have this back catalog just built up and it's just like gorgeous and beefy waiting for someone to buy a membership just even for a month, then you're more likely to get subscribers that way.
I think that this is so good. I think it's so smart. I love the idea of, when you're just getting started, like, think it's a long game. Y'all have heard me say this time and time again. It's not about publishing your show and getting 1 million downloads tomorrow. It is the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But, you're sitting here talking about your bonus content. And because I don't have a private model that way, can you explain a little bit about what you do put behind your paywall for your membership?
So I have the 8% Patreon account, which means that I'm above the light because I like to have the membership tiers with Patreon. Patreon enables you to have membership tiers. And it's a really, really great idea to have a really low tier, maybe like $1 or $2 a month. And I do one bonus episode a month for those people and give them a shout out on a podcast episode. And that's really great for people that maybe don't have a lot of money to give, but they really want to support you and they want to get something back in exchange for that. So yeah, I have a $1 tier. You want to do a mid tier. Mine's like $5. And that one is like maybe a couple digital downloads every now and then. And I write a card to them, like handwrite a card, a thank you card, and give them a holographic sticker of my podcast logo. And then, yeah, they get like one extra bonus episode a month on top of the $1. And then you want one that's like a little bit higher than you think people are going to pay. And you'd be surprised. People will pay those higher amounts, and it's really weird. But yeah, that one, I have more stuff. Like I do like behind the scenes videos of me like goofing up or my cat's meowing while I'm trying to record. And, I mean, I'll just do like silly things. And then of course they get everything else. But yeah, I do have to say the really popular thing is the handwritten thank you notes with the stickers. And it's so cool when they get that and they post it to Instagram. Like I'll get listeners posting the card that I wrote to them on Instagram, and it's so fun to share that. And I've noticed that when they do that and I share it on my feed, I get like a couple extra, and it's just so much fun. To send that to people, and I felt a little creepy doing it at first, but about to tell you something that really works is whenever I get someone that pays those higher amounts, I will social media stalk them. And in my thank you note, I will tell them, like, by the way, your cat Mittens is so cute. Or I will tell them, oh my gosh, I loved your wedding dress. Congratulations. Or I will tell them like, wow, your blog is so cool. And that means so much to them. It really does. They get so excited about it. And then it actually creates a conversation and you build like a little bit of a relationship with those people. And then they stick around longer, which is really great. So you might have one person that like maybe they, do the $5 tier for 1 month, and that's great. And you send them the card and they were only able to stick around that 1 month. But more often than not, when you tell people like, I see you and I appreciate you, thank you so much, then they will stick around a really long time.
I love this so much. This is like my marketing heart is just like beating so fast because I'm such a fan of handwritten notes, and everything that you just said it's marketing. It is basic marketing, but it's also genuine. Like it's so genuine. And I think that, there's other ways that people are like, how can I just get more listeners? How can I get more downloads? But what you're talking about is how can I get a listener for life? How can I create this community of people that just feel really connected with me? And especially in the digital space, how do you make that connection with your listeners? So, oh my gosh, you're just dropping so many awesome gems. Like I hope everybody listening is like, this was such a fantastic conversation, but I want to wrap up with a few rapid fire questions that we ask all of our guests. So are you up for that?
Yeah, I think.
It's okay. I promise. They're super easy. There's just 3. And you kind of answered one of them earlier, but the first one is, what advice would you give to a brand new podcaster?
Yeah, I did kind of go into this with like the self-doubt. Let me do another. I think that a $70 USB microphone is just as good as a $300 XLR. That's my 2 cents on that.
Ooh, that's a mic drop moment. I love it. I love it.
Mic drop.
Okay. Yes, literal mic drop. I need a sound effect for that, which I don't know what a mic drop would really sound like other than something like busting all over the ground
or really bad. Just a bad
yeah, falling on carpet. Let's just not do that. Don't abuse your microphones, guys. Don't do it. Okay, my next question is a 2-part question.
Okay.
And it is, what is the dream podcast you would love to be on? And who is your dream podcast guest?
Oh, okay. My dream podcast that I would be on. Oh, this is so hard. I think it would be Hello from the Magic Tavern, because I think they are so funny and inappropriate, and it's completely different than what I get to do, and I would love it. I would never get to show anyone though, because it'd be too bad, but I would die. I actually got to talk to them on Clubhouse, and it was so funny. I felt like I was in my own little podcast with them, and I was so excited.
Love it.
And my dream podcast guest, my dream podcast musical guest would be Sigur Rós, because I love their like ambient Icelandic music, and it would just be like such a dream to do something like a Nordic story with them. That would be huge.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. And then my last question is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Yes. I do. So says my spreadsheet.
Oh my gosh. I love this so much. Like, I feel like we could just keep talking for hours and hours about all these things. And Jordan and I will probably get off this call and message back and forth because it's what we do. We nerd out on podcasting. But where can everybody find more about you and your podcast?
I can be found at dreamfulstories.com. And
Awesome.
everything, all the links and everything's there. Pictures of my cats, episodes, whatever you want.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jordan. This was so much fun.
I know. I loved it.
Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Krystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Krystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of fan mail shout outs.